Alrighty. Welcome everyone to our COP today. We are excited to present this. We're going to be delving into youth nicotine and tobacco prevention and cessation in New Hampshire today. Got a couple great presenters, so we're excited to have y'all. And I think we can go ahead and get started. It looks like people are rolling in from the waiting room.
Yep, I'll do the waiting room.
Perfect. We can get going then. So our objectives today, we're going to learn the current perceptions and tendencies from New Hampshire youth, examine the challenges to youth nicotine and tobacco prevention, review the present approaches to youth nicotine and tobacco prevention, and explore available resources for nicotine and tobacco prevention as well as cessation. So just a couple quick housekeeping notes as usual before we get started. It's important to know that we will be recording today's meeting, so you'll be able to view it at a later date. We do ask that everyone mutes your microphone when you're not speaking. And if you have internet issues, you can try turning off your video camera. Sometimes that helps. If you're having trouble hearing, you can expand the audio icon to open the audio settings. And from here, you can select a different speaker from the menu or adjust the volume. And then we also encourage you to use emoticons under your reactions to convey your emotions virtually. This could be a response to something you hear from the presenters. And please note that we will be using the chat feature for participants to post questions to the presenters. Please refrain from posting personal questions, and we will have a Q&A at the end of the presentations today. All right, so with that, we can introduce our presenters.
So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry. It's been one of those days where it still feels like it's the morning. I wanted to introduce you to the people that will be presenting today. My name is Kim Wade. I am with the Bureau of Drug and Alcohol Services, and we help to support the community practice that are facilitated by Growth Partners and New Hampshire TAC. The first presenter is going to be Teresa Brown. She has been with the New Hampshire Tobacco Prevention and Cessation Program since 2000. Teresa is a subject matter expert in tobacco use, dependency, and treatment for youth and adults. Teresa has been with the New Hampshire Tobacco Quit Line contract manager since 2005. She assists the TPCP team in partnering with agencies and organizations, internal and external, to DHHS to reduce the use of tobacco products, particularly in populations with the highest utilization. So thank you, Teresa, for joining us. We appreciate and are looking forward to your first presentation. And then pause there a second slide for, there we go, great. And our second presenter to follow is going to be Vicki Harris. And in her bio, she is the coalition coordinator for the Dover Coalition for Youth, as well as the Prevention Service Unit supervisor for the Dover, New Hampshire Police Department. Vicki coordinates community-wide drug prevention efforts and has worked to sustain and expand programming. Vicki currently supervises the police department's prevention service unit in a grant portfolio of over half a dozen federal, state, and local prevention grants. I will also like to say that Vicki Harris is one of our newest advanced certified prevention specialists. For those of you that didn't make it last week, they had the Certified Prevention Specialist of the Year celebration, which went to Lisa Vasquez, who works for the city of Nashua as the she's part of the Regional Public Health Network. So I know her as the SMP, the Substance Misuse Prevention Coordinator. But we have 3, I believe, in the state that are currently just got the newest Advanced Certified Prevention Specialist, and Vicki is one of them. So I wanted to congratulate her on that. So now I will turn it over to our first presenter, Teresa, and please feel free, anybody who wants to start putting in questions as they're presenting, to put them into the chat. We can moderate and read those out, and there'll be a moderated discussion at the end of both presentations.
So good morning, I'm following you, Kim. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here and do some presentation on the youth aspect of the Quit Line and our program in general. What I'm going to present on is My Life, My Quit, and the slides. I don't probably have enough slides to take up a full half hour, so there'll be plenty of room for discussion at the end. So why are we here? and I basically followed what was given to me by Candace. So learn the current perceptions and tendencies from New Hampshire youth, nicotine, tobacco prevention and treatment for youth, and examine the challenges with that, present some approaches for that, and then explore some resources. So here we go with the first slide. The Youth Risk Behavior Survey, as you know, has its limitations, but what we find in New Hampshire is about the same as what we find nationally speaking, except for the most recent, this is 2023, and what I found nationally out and about was some of the information about when it was 2021. But overall, it looks about the same. So we have 16.7 currently using electronic vapor products at least one day during the last 30 days. And this is the division of male versus female using it. And next slide. So ever use by grade, as you can see, and this is again nationally the same types of trends. It goes up, use goes up as the grade goes up. And then we have just a couple of more graphs here or charts of, and this is risk behavior survey with currently using. So currently using is right there, the 9th through the 12th grade. Next slide. And this is frequently, so you were ever using and then frequently using. Again, goes straight up. And then product access and quit attempts by grade. And this is buying at the store, obviously very low percent who have tried quitting. So what these slides are basically telling us is that they're accessing their products from friends, family, other places, but not going to the store. I talked to the Liquor Enforcement Bureau, where they do the youth underage buying, and they just roughly do tobacco. They don't separate it out as vape or combustible or the other ones in between, the Zyn and the Chew and whatever. They just basically, it's tobacco across the board. So I couldn't get any breakdown on underage buying at stores for what type of tobacco it is. But take a look at the percentage of youth who have said they want to quit. And this is on a survey, and that's really, it's very telling. Now, what that looks like, and these are percent have tried quitting in the past year. So what does that look like? Have they tried, for a day, for an hour? So let's explore just a little bit about, if you have this many who want to quit, how can we reach them? How can we encourage them? How can we support them? So you can go to the next page. The next slide, sorry. So let's start with, why are they trying in the first place? Vape is the perfect thing for kids, because it's a curiosity and experimentation. It's fairly new to the market as opposed to cigarettes. It has great packaging, has great advertising. There's target marketing, flavoring. It has everything in a one-stop shop for these kids, and it's against the law and against the rules. So that's even more enticing for this population. If you've raised kids or no kids, and I assume most everybody on this call has pretty well engaged with this population, really, really, this is a perfect little product to use. So why do they start using? maybe their friends have said it, helps them with their depression and anxiety. They're self-medicating. Maybe it's just curiosity and experimentation. Are they getting some pressure from friends? It looks normalizing because I've heard the phrase, well, everybody's doing it. Uh, Is it lack of education of what the health effects could be, or what the impact of nicotine on the developing brain has? Is it lack of confidence to stand up to others, or lack of confidence to think, to try quitting and then try again and try again? They don't have the confidence that it's going to work. So in this little picture on the side, infographic, it has a good combination of, nicotine is addictive, especially to the developing brain, unregulated nicotine levels. That's totally out there. And so when I hear, oh, we're only using the 5%, now you really don't know that. That's not exactly accurate, or maybe it is, but there's also a great likelihood that it's not accurate. It alters brain development, as we all know, and increases the likelihood of dual use and changing to combustibles later on. Next slide. So there's challenges for prevention. And one of the biggest challenges is if you have this going on by your role models at home, where you hang out, in your quote safe places, you have users. And what that says is it's a very normal thing to do, that it's okay, that it's not a bad thing, not unhealthy. It's simply a choice. And those role models, parents and guardians, may also have that lack of education, lack of confidence. They may have been doing it themselves since their brain was developing, and they're so addicted and they make the excuses. Or it's one of those, well, I heard that it was a way to quit smoking, or it's less harmful than actually using cigarettes, so I'm using this. So really a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of inaccurate information, lack of responsible supervision. So say these kids, and we're talking about middle schoolers too. So these kids are going over to somebody else's house, and the parents at that house, or the adults in that house are using. They don't watch the kids, they don't really interact with the kids, they don't have a lot of good supervision over them. So they're free to go out back and experiment. And there was a day when we all did it, regardless of where we were. We tried high risk behaviors as soon as we were out of the sight of people who were supervising us. I totally understand that. So perhaps easy access to older siblings or parent supplies. They may or may not know, they may or may not care. Again, it's those challenges that are out of our control as support services to these young ones. So I like to look at it as it takes a village approach. There's a menu of people out there. There's so many support systems out there that if the village all comes together and offers support and caring, I really feel like this can shift with youth. If you have this many that want to quit, over half of these youth who are using want to quit. They just need that. They need that support. They need that push. They need that safe environment. They need that education. They need that boost of confidence. And I feel like when we all get together and we're all sending the same message, that it can be done. There's so much research that's been written about the changes in the brain, and that the pathways are totally messed with in terms of you change the way everything functions in the brain, and as natural hormones decrease and the use of pretend hormones, the nicotine gets in there and it just snuffs out what's supposed to be there naturally. I really feel like if there's a way to engage youth to really look at that and examine that, there could be a way to shift this whole culture of, well, everybody does it. So good role models, perhaps you're in your schools, the officers, the SAPs, clinical systems. You have great pediatricians out there. In fact, there's a American Association of Pediatrics, AAP, has a super webinar that really explains how to work with kids on this and how to identify it. And basically, clinical systems are ideal for identifying and starting the process for the youth to think about things in a different way, to talk to somebody about this. The clinical systems are set up to be the safe place, and the youth can go and talk to their pediatrician about what they're using, how much they're using, how frequent they're using, and the pediatrician gets a really good idea of the addiction level. There's plenty, there's three main identifiers or standard assessment tools for finding out how addicted they are. And it's really sad to see that oftentimes they're waking up in the middle of the night to use their vape products, obviously showing a very high addiction level. But the clinical system can refer them to outside resources. The clinical system can continue another recheck to make sure that they're doing that their health, their entire health and wellness is being considered, along with what they're doing for high-risk behaviors. Then you have the judicial systems. The judicial system has a opportunity to really help these kids, and without punitive ramifications, but they also need those resources. And I guess the bottom line to this entire presentation is there are resources out there. We just need to share a little bit better and get a little better at using the resources. Educational systems, we're working right now across the nation, basically, of keeping the kids in school. How do we reduce the out of school time and increase the in school time, but at the same time not let them, quote, get away with behavior that's against policy within the school? It's not, the answer is not kicking them out of school. The answer is, again, using your support, using your resources, and trying to change policy and procedure to educate, build confidence. A workplace smoke-free laws. So as we all know, once you get into high school, you start also in the workforce. And what's the workforce that you're most likely to find teenagers at? Is the hospitality industry, waitressing, waiting, waiters, the cooks, the dishwashers, things like that. Sometimes, construction type jobs that you're holding a sign all day. We really need to help those workplaces understand that they don't owe anybody a smoke break, and it's going to be better overall for their workforce and for their their bottom line to not allow these extra breaks and just because they say I need to go have a cigarette, or even being cognizant that they may be vaping while they're working and they think they're not being noticed, because as we all know who are in this at this webinar today, they're really easy to hide, they're really easy to use. So challenges galore for prevention. Okay, next slide, please. So what to say, what not to say? How do we figure this out? How do we get them engaged? If this many want to quit, then why aren't they quitting? So if you're in a position to have some sort of engagement with them, and it's going to be perhaps over time, the bottom line of and then the building block of this foundation is to build the trust and portray yourself as a safe person to talk to, confidential, a trusted friend. And the way you sort of go about this is to have these conversations, but find out a little bit about them, which really shows that you care more, you care about their whole being, rather than so you're here today because you got caught vaping. Well, can you start in with something else and talk around the goals? We have at the program, we hired JSI, CHI to do some youth research for us. And what they found out is just amazing. And we have a few good learning modules on our website for providers to look at that. Well, and we'll get all into this at the end, but you know, the bottom line is that these kids care that you know, if you know, we can reach out, and if you're reaching out to us, we can trust you. So if you start out with these basic questions about, what do you, how are you doing, and what are your favorite things to do, what's your least favorite, and then that can come around to guiding the conversation towards, what do you like about the vaping, what does it do for you, and then perhaps slip in some education about, over time it really creates more anxiety. Can you share, like, since you started vaping, do you feel like your anxiety is decreased, increased, and why? And they have answers. They have answers for everything. So those little motivational conversations can really reveal a lot about them. And acting, using your own skills in terms of, I really care that you're a healthy, productive human being that has a great future, and be sincerely interested in what they're doing. We'll do the next slide. So this is an old slide. I've seen it in a lot of presentations, national presentations over the years. But when I was watching the AAP webinar, I actually thought it would be a good conversation to show all of us, if we haven't seen this before, and even if we have, to really talk about the chemical nicotine versus the therapeutic nicotine. And this is a cigarette, and vape is not far behind it. The cigarette is probably the fastest, most effective delivery system that was ever built to get nicotine into your brain. But vaping isn't far behind it, and Juul was the developer and the creator of finding out that nicotine salts really increases the speed and the effectiveness of the hit of nicotine to your brain. Once nicotine salts was added to the recipe of vape products, they found a much faster and effective way for that nicotine to reach the brain. And the chemical reactions, like I have read them multiple times, but I would never dare to actually explain them, except to say that yes, nicotine salts is the catalyst for getting that nicotine quickly to the brain, right behind cigarettes. However, if you look at some of the cessation medications, the lines really flatten out, which is better because you don't have that when you have those spikes, there's so much chaos going on in the brain that it basically overloads the brain with the nicotine, and it overdoses in nicotine, and it really does affect your natural serotonin levels and your natural levels of your own brain hormones that that are being affected to counteract the basically the satiation hormones that say, oh, okay, you've had enough. They're so out of whack that you don't know what enough is anymore, and you still have those empty spots where your natural dopamine used to be, that nicotine has quickly overdosed and then quickly fades and then fades off. So when you have these cessation medications and the uptake is much slower, and the half-life of it is much longer, you have sustained levels, although lower, they're sustained. So what your brain is not overdosed, it is not overreacting to the overdose, and you're more likely to have a much evener ability to stop the high doses of the nicotine. And so when we recommend, or when we suggest, or I prescribe perhaps the cessation medications, we're really looking at a long acting, so the patch, which has a very long, slow rise of use, you know, up to 30 minutes, sometimes even up to an hour for some people to really feel it. And then an extra dose when needed, when the cravings are the worst and they're having a hard time getting through them, the short acting, the gum. And you can see how old the slide is. The lozenge isn't even on here. They don't sell the nicotine spray anymore because the ingredients for the nicotine spray are apparently not accessible right now. So obviously you can see how old this slide is, but it works the same way, that we want to always be cognizant when we're recommending medication, that you're thinking long term, and then a short acting as well. You do the next slide. So here's our e-learning module with Dr. Sutansky. She has a really, really good, she did a great job for us. Youth vaping basics. I really recommend that you get into these training modules. They were done very, very nicely. The training modules they're very interactive, and we have the more training modules coming. We were changing some of the training platforms, and we're working with JSI is working very hard. They're out there interviewing kids. They're doing such a great job to make sure that our learning modules have really good information, and that the youth information that we're going to be releasing is true and on spot for what really is going on out there with that young population. The next one. So here's some of our resources, and these are mostly for the adults. That we have posters, the rat cards, and the You Can Quit booklets. The nice thing about the You Can Quit booklets is it really follows a nice cessation pattern that is evidence-based, and allows you to keep track of things and record your feelings. It has like a little journal inside. We also, as you can see, have the Spanish services and the TTY services to address the other populations that need information. The next one. And this is My Life, My Quit. This is our youth-based resources, the business card, the posters, and the rack card. You can order as many of these as you want. The My Life, My Quit was researched and actually done so that to attract the youth population. Evidence-based practices for youth is really hard because they're here, they're there, they're everywhere. And it's very hard to know what they're going to like today is not what they're going to like tomorrow, or new fads come and go so quickly. So whenever a youth product is advertised, you always have to use it in conjunction with the rest of the things that we're all doing in the Take a Village approach. The next slide, I think, is mostly resources. So the first one is the one I was talking about. It's really a great webinar. I've watched it a few times. It's very good. The data for the 2023 YRBS is in the middle, and the last resource is a list of resources that we've come up with at the program, and we vet them every once in a while to make sure that the links are still live and the resources are still out there on the web. So we welcome you to obviously use these and anything else that we have at the program. I know Jess is on the call. Jess is our My Life, My Quit specialist, and I'm going to call you out a little bit, Jess. If you can just chime in and give a few statistics on the My Life, My Quit. I know we do a national comparison as well as what's going on in the state. Oh, maybe she stepped off.
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Did you wanted to know how we've done in New Hampshire with My Life, My Quit?
Yeah, you say it way better than me because you are way better practiced at rolling it off your tongue.
So the My Life Quit program allows youth to actually enroll either via text, online chat, or do the telephone, which they primarily do either the web-based or the texting. I think primarily they're texting. We do have very low numbers in terms of coaching calls. At the moment, we are allowing youth who enroll in at least one coaching call to receive a backpack, and we've given about maybe a half dozen away in the last year. So we're always trying to increase our numbers of youth that are actually getting the coaching calls. We have a lot of enrollments, but it's not moving anything further along other than them enrolling in the program. They don't go for a coaching call is what we're finding.
Thank you. So I called her out on that because she just has a lot to do because we do a lot of media for it. We do a lot of social media with that, and Jess really has her finger on the pulse. Even though I get the reports from the Quit line, Jess has a really good finger on the pulse of what's working, what's not working, and it's the same look nationally. There's another, this is Quitting that's developed by the Truth Campaign. My other states, New England states, when we get together and talk about these, one's not doing any great strides better than another. So we have to find this percentage of youth who are really trying to quit, find them wherever they're at, and meet them where they're at in their efforts, and try to tie this all together and work as a village to give them the resources and the support and the confidence to make another quit attempt or maintain their quit, and work with them where they're at. Because if over half are trying to quit, it would be lovely if we cut if the figures in 2 years were cut in half from the 9th grade to the 12th. So that's all I have to say about that. That's how you can reach me if you want more information. Are there any questions?
Folks can feel free to enter into the chat too. And if you want to wait until after the second presentation to ask your questions, we can also do that as well, Teresa. That way,
That's fine. That's
you
fine.
can share the burden with Vicky of answering questions.
Whatever is good for the group.
Perfect.
That's what I was gonna say. So if you guys want to hold on to your questions until after Vicky's presentation, then we will have one collective Q&A opportunity. And thank you, Teresa, for a wonderful presentation.
My pleasure.
Great. Well, first off, thank you guys for inviting me to join. Really, I'm just here to provide a snapshot of what we've been doing in Dover around vaping and nicotine prevention. So on the next slide, just sort of a quick overview. If those of you aren't familiar with Dover, we've been doing prevention work for a little over 3 decades, completed a drug-free communities program, currently have Partnership for Success, STOP Act, CARA, and BDAS funding, along with other local funding sources. Have been doing coalition work focused around substance misuse prevention for a long time. But a lot of our work revolves around youth and engaging youth in the work. So Dover Youth to Youth is our evidence-based youth empowerment program. And you'll see sort of their name and stamp on a lot of the different things that I highlight today. So the next slide really just talks about why we're focusing on vaping. And I think Teresa did a really good job sort of summarizing that, but really looking at the youth risk behavior survey data, vaping continually stands out as an issue. We've also had a lot of conversations with our local school department. And over the last few years, they've seen a drastic increase in vaping violations on campus. Last school year, they saw over 100% increase. They've seen students as young as 4th grade caught on the bus with vape devices. In just the first few months of this past school year, the school had 14 vaping violations in the school bathrooms. And that resulted in newspaper articles in our local newspaper, discussions at school board meetings, really got a lot of attention within the community. And then we've had focus groups with coalition members, with community members, and this is a topic that continually rises up in those discussions. So we're really hearing from the community that it's a problem, so that's why we've focused on it. So the next slide really sort of provides that overview. When we talk about any of these issues, any substance, any topic that we focus on, we really try and take a multi-prong approach. So we're really those firm believers that there's not one curriculum or one intervention that's going to solve the problem. So it's really that multi-prong approach. We do everything from classroom presentations to school policies. We've done a lot around staff education in the schools, media campaigns. So really, I'm just going to highlight some of those things that we've done. So the first one on the next slide is, so this is from not the most recent YRBS because we haven't updated it yet, but from the 23, the last one before that, 21, I think it was. So we took the YRBS data and really worked with our high school to translate that data in a way that was easy for school staff, anyone from the principal to the math teacher to the lunch lady could really understand the data and what we were trying to share, because we've probably all seen the state YRBS reports, and while it provides great information, it's not always easy for the average person to understand. So we wanted to really translate that data. We also wanted to provide resources and best practices on what they can do. the data is telling us that vaping is a problem, but what are the resources? How can I help students in my school? And then we really wanted that call to action that delivered simple, concrete activities that any staff in the school could utilize. Anyone from the lunch lady to the principal could implement these things. So we created a one-page data brief, as well as weekly postcards that the staff got in their mailboxes. And it really followed this observe, connect, reflect, network theme. So the first, Friday of the month or whatever it was, we gave them a data point and asked the staff to observe that within their classroom, within the cafeteria, wherever it was, and sort of think about how they're seeing that play out in the school. How are they seeing that data point? And then we asked for staff to connect. So we provided some sort of a connection question or activity, so that they could really build those protective factors within the school and get to know students, connect with them. Then the third week, we asked staff to reflect and really think about how these topics interact with what they have going on in their personal life. And then the last week of the month, we provided in-person networking activities and events to get the staff together and talking. So on the next slide, you can see a sample of the data brief and the postcards. And I did throw on a QR code there if anyone wants to download the materials. If you need the original files or whatever, we're happy to share any of this so that you can put in your local data and use it locally, so that it works for your school or community. And one of the things that I will point out on this data brief, we did a variety of different topics, but the vaping one in particular, we're starting to look at LGBTQ youth and how they are using at higher rates than their peers. So I would expect probably this fall we'll have a new campaign that the students are working on that's really that social norming focus, but targeted towards LGBTQ youth, to really emphasize that, yes, you're at an increased risk of using or you're using at higher rates, but the overwhelming majority of students aren't using vapes or a variety of other substances. So that's to come. The next slide is the last social norming campaign that we did, and really sort of focuses on countering that belief that youth commonly have that everyone is doing it. You get these newspaper articles or everyone showing up at the school board expressing concern over vaping in the bathroom or something, but we really want to use that YRBS data to highlight that the majority of students aren't engaging in these behaviors. So this was a campaign from a couple years ago. We actually rolled it out in the middle of COVID, just because of the way that grant funding aligned and the timing of things. So one of the things that we actually did was we had floor decals made, and the high school had like 800 of these floor decals all throughout the auditorium, throughout the cafeteria, the hallways. They were using them for social distancing, but it was a great way for us to reinforce the message because the students were seeing these fish all over the school. We really leveraged some social media. While we were virtual, we actually hosted a school-wide Kahoot game. It's like an online trivia sort of game that all of the students did. There were a bunch of different activities. We actually leveraged our advisory block and created discussion guides for teachers, and we ended up doing a discussion guide for parents as well to really emphasize that the data is reliable, where the data comes from, explain what is the YRBS, how is it utilized, and really sort of get students to sort of build that trust level that the information portrayed in the posters and social media posts and everything is reliable, and then it's really sort of utilizing the information that they told us. So we're working on some more social norming campaigns with the newest data, but just sort of another example how we highlighted vaping, but also touched on other substances as well. The next slide talks about some of our classroom education projects. So Dover still utilizes the DARE program. And like I said before, there's no one curriculum that's going to solve our vaping problem or any of our substance use problems. So we've done a lot of work to enhance that curriculum. Our youth students go in and teach additional classes. We do education in like first and second grade with costume characters and everything. We have an intense fourth grade. It's a 2-lesson program that's the truth about tobacco, where we heavily emphasize vaping. And with that, we have homework assignments where the students need to go home and interview someone that smokes or vapes, where they can sort of learn more about the addiction process from someone that they know and trust. And overwhelmingly, those students come back and say, yeah, the person I interviewed said they wish they never started vaping or smoking because of the addiction and everything. So we do a variety of different classroom education pieces. We do a lot of media, like on the next slide. And we were having trouble earlier playing the video, so we don't have to play it right now, but just wanted to sort of highlight some of the media that students have created. So one of the other projects I work on is the Granite Youth Alliance, and we had our annual film festival last night down at the Music Hall in Portsmouth, and there were 7 films that were shown, and the students get to pick their own topic and everything. Half of the films last night touched on vaping in some way. So students are really telling us that this is a problem that they're seeing, and they're coming up with creative messaging and ways to, talk to their peers about this. So I can share additional links to those videos and stuff. But another example of media work that they've done is they created this lab rat campaign. And it's really designed to make youth aware of the manipulative tactics of the vape and e-cigarette industry. There's been a lot of research and studies that show that when we're communicating messages that there's an industry or a group of adults that are trying to addict you, make you sick, take your money, that's a message that really resonates with teens. That's why we saw the Truth campaign when I was in high school and college be so successful. So we pull a lot of those messages. So the campaign implies that the vape industry treats teens like lab rats, and they want to make them addicted so they can make money. So there's a series of posters focusing on different messages, everything from depression and anxiety, like you can see here. The next slide highlights a couple more of those messages, really educating teens that nicotine is in vapes. A lot of these students don't necessarily understand that and understand the addictive nature. Some of them think that it's just harmless water vapor. We talk a lot about the role that flavors play and how flavors can make it easier for youth to start vaping, but make it really difficult for them to quit because of the nicotine. So on the next few slides, there's some examples of the posters, and we ordered a bunch of these posters, and we have more than we would utilize in Dover. So if anyone wants some of the posters, we have some hard copies that I can mail or drop off for people. And I can always send the files if people want to print them themselves. But these are just some of the examples, talking about candy flavors, the toxic chemicals, the addictive chemicals. And then the next slide. So if anyone's familiar with Youth to Youth, they tend to make quite the spectacle. So they took this campaign and the posters, and then they turned it into a big rally that they did in downtown Dover. So you can see them with the large candy, the lollipops, and They created a large mouse trap and had a mouse costume. They had posters and chants, and really right on one of the main roads in the downtown, they were out there chanting, raising, making quite a spectacle. That, you know, really brought even more attention to this. It resulted in newspaper articles and a lot of media attention, to help further the messages of the campaign. And then the next slide is really the last project that I want to highlight. And it's our alternative suspension program. So we just launched this a year ago in conjunction with the school department, because they were really talking about, you know, we saw 14 vaping violations in the first quarter of the school year, and they were struggling, not having the resources, not having the knowledge or expertise to really deal with these violations. So any student who was caught vaping was automatically suspended for 3 days. So we were able to work with our local middle school. And Teresa talked about this earlier about how, you know, the goal is really to keep students in school and connect them with resources. There's a lot of national research that shows that exclusionary school discipline can actually result in higher rates of substance use and all kinds of additional problems. So the coalition worked to develop an intervention, and on the next slide, it sort of outlines that process. So we developed a referral process with the school where if there's a violation, they talk to the student's parent, get consent to join the program and share information, and they send us all of that student's information. Within, you know, usually a day or two, we have staff or social work interns that go into the school for 1 hour each day and provide an in-school intervention with that student. So we've worked on developing curriculum to really focus on things like values, decision-making, boundary setting. We have some online courses that we utilize as well. So really looking to have those conversations with the student, build a relationship, and connect them with resources. So one of the biggest things we were seeing before is that the school would just suspend students and not connect them to resources like My Life, My Quit, not have those conversations around boundary setting or how they might do something differently. And it's not to blame the school. They were doing the best they could with the resources they had. But it was really looking at what are some of the resources that we as a coalition have that we can partner and leverage to help make things better. And a big part of that partnership was relying on our juvenile diversion program. So after the in-school interventions, the student and their parents meet with our diversion program. So it's a panel of adults in the community that also deal with criminal juvenile diversion cases. They take on our alternative suspension students and work with them to develop an individualized 30-day contract that really can include a range of different things, everything from making sure that they're attending school, that they're participating in after-school activities. We leveraged our local teen center, where they have one-on-one peer mentoring with some college interns that we have. There's some sort of a self-development project, educational components. So the panel develops this contract that's typically about 30 days long, and then our staff and interns work with the student to implement the elements of that contract. And then they graduate from the program. And the agreement with the school is this entire time that they're in the program, they are still participating in school regularly. They're participating in after-school activities. If there's a school dance or, you know, a field trip or, you know, other things that they would be excluded from if they were suspended, that they're still able to participate in those activities. That's specific to vaping violations. You know, where we're working with the school on alternative suspension more broadly, as well. So, you know, at the end of the day, the school needs to maintain that safe learning environment for everyone, but really looking at making sure we're not punishing students for vaping when they're not getting the resources and support. The majority of our students, when they come into the program, like Teresa said earlier, have said that they've tried quitting or they want to quit. Is it 100% are no longer vaping at the end of the 30 days? No, but we're moving in that direction, trying to sort of move them down that path of quitting or cutting back their use, getting connected to those resources so that they can eventually quit. So the program, the next slide, talking about some of the data. Like I said, it's only a year in. I am excited to share that we have been accepted into the New Hampshire Service to Science program as an innovative program. And we will be getting a grant over the next year to really formalize some of our evaluation tools, our logic model, our lit review, all of sort of the sciencey, evidence-based stuff behind it, so that we can really evaluate this. And we're expecting sometime in 2025 to start a replication process where we'll be looking for a few sites across the state that can try to replicate this so that we can show that it's something that can show results outside of Dover, but also help us gather some of that data to further move down the service to science process. So that's sort of the quick overview of some of the things that we've done. The last slide has my contact info. I'm more than happy to share any of the resources, any of the materials that I've highlighted. But this was just sort of a quick overview of some of the prevention stuff that Dover is currently working on or has worked on. And I will turn it back over to Candace for questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vicky. That was great. And we should be able to all see each other now. There we go. Vicky, there are a couple of questions in the chat. Does anybody want to come off mute and ask your questions to her? If not, we can read them out loud.
I can ask my question. This is Catalina Kirsch over in Carroll County. Is there a sample policy template available for that restorative practice for nicotine related school infractions? Something, because I know that's a question that that our school partners have been working on actively, and sometimes they turn to us for resources on that question.
So we actually didn't need to change our school policy because the way that it's written is vaping or substance use violations can result in a suspension or other creative means of discipline. So like they already had it written into the policy that the deans and principals had some leeway and creativity. So I can pull out the proposal that we drafted for the school that we presented to the superintendent and stuff on how the program would work and the referral process and everything, but we didn't actually have to change our school policy.
Thank you. I know people will be looking for that, but that workflow will be interesting as a sample that other people might, look to replicate.
And I see the question around funding for the program. So we got a Partnership for Success grant, which is a large federal grant, and we wrote this in as one of the objectives for that. So there is some staff time that was utilized, but like I said, we also leveraged our juvenile diversion committee, and our juvenile diversion coordinator helps a lot with this. And we have 3 social work interns. So we had 2 last year, we have 3 coming on this year that are required to work with us 16 hours a week the entire school year. So that's a lot of hours that we've been able to leverage. And really, social work interns this is like the perfect connection and field for them. So we've really been able to leverage interns, grant funding, other community resources. So it's not like it was just one grant to work on this. It was really sort of a mix and pulling from a variety of different sources.
Anybody else have any questions for Teresa or Vicky?
I do, if you don't mind.
Or go ahead.
So, one thing I didn't hear about and I'm interested in is resources for pediatric healthcare providers, whereas, and I'm not an expert, but I know there's a lot of nicotine cessation treatment protocols that are designed for adults, and I'm curious to know what the latest is on treatment for adolescents, because while I appreciate that there's a behavioral health, aspect to this larger issue, there's also a health condition that is dependency to nicotine that is not just clearly solved by behavioral interventions.
Thanks for the question, Catalina. Yeah, so the FDA says nobody under 18, it's recommended, nobody under 18 is prescribed nicotine replacement therapy products. However, the AAP article that I was reading and the webinar both point to, your doctors, if you want to use something off label, that you to use the product, explain this, have a frank discussion about how to use the product correctly, so the gum is not just chewed, it's, parked, and the actual, lozenge is not to be just, put in the middle of your tongue and sucked or chewed on at all. Those types of things, and that the patch is not supposed to be worn in the same place every time, that the exact, and these instructions are obviously on the packaging, but that it's that the medical person should be going over these in detail and what the side effects can be. You might possibly break out with a rash on, when you put it on your skin. I mean, let's be honest. Nicotine's a pesticide. That's why it's in the tobacco plant. Nicotine's there to kill the the tobacco beetle. That's what it is. Nicotine is not supposed to taste good. It's a pesticide. It's not supposed to, be rubbed into your skin. It's a pesticide. So, but the amounts in these nicotine replacement therapy products are at levels that might not bother you at all. It might have a little bit of irritation you can live with. It might be full-blown irritation and absolutely discontinue the use and call me. So, the patch, don't put it in the same place. Don't put it where there's hair. Keep an eye on your own skin. And if it keeps you up at night, don't wear it at night. The lozenge, it can cause like a canker sore in your mouth. It can cause a little bit of some people it causes a little bit of sore throat. The gum, same thing, it might give you a canker sore. So again, don't put it there again, or I mean, what can you tolerate? They definitely say that the use of bupropion is oftentimes very helpful for youth in low doses, because the reason they're using in the first place is depression, anxiety, and bupropion, Wellbutrin basically is a anxiety medication. It's not a strong medication, but it does help. It does help in some cases, not across the board, and that's why as a pediatrician, you're gonna track this youth. You're gonna make sure that you have follow-up with them, those kinds of things. But the AAP really feels like, we've gone through medical school, we're in a practice. You can use your due diligence as a healthcare medical provider when you're treating this population, and a lot of pediatricians, you know, and just if you've seen Sue Tansky speak at all, she is like the biggest advocate for using medication, you know, for using the counseling, the coaching, but for using a little medication. Typically, you know, she's had good luck. She's had, you know, cases where they can't use it, or for whatever reason, or the parents are like, no, 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 no medication. So, you know, you go back to your tool chest and you know, try to do your best. Again, like Vicky says, you do the best you can with what you have to work with. But don't give up. Did that answer your question, Catalina?
It does. To me, it points to perhaps an opportunity in the state for, you know, whoever is the entity that puts on professional development for the primary care providers, pediatricians and related nurse practitioners and other providers, because the truth is they're reaching out to us in the public health networks of what do we do for these kids. So clearly there's opportunity for continued professional development on, because they want to help kids as well. And so anyway, that's why I just brought up the question, is what is the healthcare side of it?
Yeah, and that's good to hear. You know, we are asked to present in certain cases, and it's always good to know what to kind of focus on in our presentation. And oftentimes we speak to audiences that have nurses, APRNs, you know, even actually the MDs actually. So that's really good information. And I will take that back with me. And when I'm asked to present, I will make sure that what more than one slide is devoted to that.
I also wanted to let you guys know that Jess put a couple of resources, the article that Teresa was talking about, she linked that. And then Kimberly also put another alternative to suspension link in the chat as well. And Melissa, are we able to link the chat resources when we put this on the website? No? Okay. I can send this to anybody who wants it, just so you guys have it all in one place if you'd like. And Teresa, I had a quick question. If nobody else has any other questions.
I did have one.
All right, go ahead, Kim.
And it's open to either one. What advice or resources are available to those people that are, say, treating other folks for other types of mental health or substance use issue, where nicotine or tobacco is also something that they're using and want to quit, but you know, you have multiple things you're addressing, not just the smoking. How do you help somebody like that? What, I mean, do they reprioritize where you're dealing with so many other issues that somebody's facing with? I know this is something that we've heard from our colleagues that work with treatment providers, where they're like, we don't know how best to address this. And you may not have an answer, but I thought I'd throw it out there.
Well, the experts, I'll field it first and then toss it to Vicky. The research points to addiction is addiction. And by recovering from your other addictions, you're not recovered unless you're not using something that's addictive in nature. And, you know, there's both sides of the coin for this. And it, you know, in the old days, I mean, I'm old, and I remember when, you know, you had to have smoke breaks at New Hampshire Hospital. You went out for smoke breaks. Cigarettes were a reward. You know, you smoked in your offices, those kinds of things. And that attitude and belief is not extinguished yet. You still run into that here and there. It is slowly changing, but the research points to the most effective way to increase the likelihood of not having relapse with alcohol and other drugs is to quit everything at the same time. And they'll go as far as caffeine. Now, I'm not all about that caffeine. I need my caffeine, but that they'll go as far as caffeine. So when you enter, you know, for your 28-day stay or whatever, like there's zilch. But I have read some really good things. I will look some stuff up because I don't have those resources at my fingertips, but they're easily out there. And I'll toss it to Vicky in case she has anything to share.
I think you hit on the science side of things. I think from that like recovery harm reduction side, it's really meeting people where they're at. What are their personal goals and how can you sort of move them down a path? And while it might be great to remove everything all at once, that's not always effective for everyone. So I think it really needs to be that individualized approach with self-directed goals and really looking at that harm reduction philosophy.
Thank you both. Melissa, did you have a question? I think you just mute. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. This is for either. So what do you do with a 15-year-old that's able to get ends units from other sources, even though we've gone to a 21 and older you know, ruling of purchase? And I speak just more from experience. You know, it just I don't know, it felt like it just took a wave over my kid, like just, you know, boom, like within a month she was probably addicted to it, to vaping. And you know, and as a parent, you know, I was looking for drugs and alcohol. You know, I wasn't looking for the you know, the vaping products. And they made it so easy for youth, to my particular instance in my family, to get addicted so quickly. It reminds me of cigarettes when I was a kid. You know, I was a smoker for 11 and up. I mean, that's how young we were. And we could buy cigarettes at the time. Our parents would send us to the store to buy the cigarettes. But what do you do to combat such heavy marketing and access? You know, they have friends that are 21 that, you know, provide them with their vapes, and they upcharge it so that they make money. So it's got a drug dealing sort of methodology to it. And then you've got the parents that are just like throwing their hands up, like, we've tried everything and we just can't break this cycle. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, what's the role of parents? Because we're trying, or I'm assuming most are trying, an honest effort, and we're losing the battle, so to speak.
I did want to just ask too, I see that we have a couple diversion folks and a few SAPs on here. So if there's anybody else who would like to chime in, please feel free to answer this question for Melissa.
So I think there's a few parts of it. You sort of hit on access. We need to think beyond access of buying in stores and really looking at that social access. We've had alternative suspension kids that tell us they have found vapes in a trash can that a parent thought was all used up, and they'll continue to get every last drop out of it, that they've found them on the street. Like, these kids get desperate and creative. So looking at social access, knowing who our kids are hanging out with and what might be available at parents' homes, friends' homes. And then I think the other part of it is really that marketing to kids, that social norming message and stuff, and really sort of convincing students that this isn't the cool, fun thing to do. And unfortunately, that's not a quick, you know, we just flip the switch and that message comes across. It's going to take time to build that message, you know, develop it, build the trust among the students, get them to buy into it. But I think it's really looking at access and messaging.
All I can say is I wouldn't want to be raising kids nowadays. It's a, I don't know, I guess back in when I was raising kids, you were always looking for, you were looking for signs and symptoms of a different kind of behavior, just in the case that, and it's not that so much different today. You just have to be so vigilant at it, and start educating at, first, second, third grade. I mean, these kids are so far ahead of the curve. When we were little, Melissa, you've got 1-year-olds who can navigate a cell phone better than I can, for sure. The 2-year-old takes the phone. I'll do it, Cece. It's just like, what? I mean, they're so advanced that, and they get, and you don't have to be able to read to see pictures, see the pictures and know what the pictures are doing. I don't think, family discussion and education can start too early about any of this stuff. And yeah, and I'm not saying that anybody who hasn't is a failure, or if you're, I would never say my kid would never do anything, because you don't know, and it's just, and then how do you stop it when it starts? As a parent, my heart breaks when I see, when you see other parents in pain because they are looking at their kid going down the wrong road. My heart breaks. Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up to that. So at the time, it was Juul that was the predominant in the marketplace, and it looked like a thumb drive to me as a parent. So I'd find them in my driveway, and I didn't know what I was looking at. So there's no visual, like
Yep.
for parents to know some of the how sleek the designs are. Like, I don't even think we talked about that really too much. Like
Yeah.
the designing of the actual unit itself, and then of course the marketing of it. But Jewel had it down
They
to a
had it.
science,
That's right. They had it.
and it made
Yeah.
it look so not harmful. So yeah, I had to throw my hands up when she was 18 and just say, like, there's not much else I can do here.
Well,
But
yeah.
it is frustrating.
Yeah.
And it is hard when you don't know what you're looking for. Like you can smell cigarettes on somebody, you can,
Yeah.
smell alcohol. Yeah, so I just thought I'd make that final
Yeah.
comment. So
You
thank
know,
you.
and I just feel like, just you'll always be the mom, and you always, rather than and you're never going to, like, throw your hands up as a figure of speech for you. You're never going to do that if they start wanting to discuss, or, say, think I should try, a passing comment, or maybe I'll go quit these or whatever. As a mom, you're going to always say, how can I help you? So, this time, they're kids for a long time, that they're kids for a long time.
And I think you bring up a really good point. Even in the prevention field, it can be hard to keep up with the latest thing that this industry is coming out with. It was Juul, now it's Puff Bars and Elf, and like all of these different things. And I struggle to keep up with it, and it's my job to. So I think we need to look at how are we communicating this message to parents and sharing that information so that they know what to look for, but also providing them those resources of, okay, my kid's in trouble, how can I get them help? How do I get them connected to the resources? Make sure that parents, pediatricians know about My Life, My Quit, all of the different things out there, so that they don't feel like they just have to throw their hands up and give up.
Well, and Vicky, I know for the Dover Coalition, they do a lot of policy and legislation, and I think that that's so vital, because these marketers and these manufacturers are so agile and they're so quick to pivot to attract our youth. And I feel like we as a society and as parents are so much more slow moving. I just saw an article this week that the FDA has paused their ban against Juul. And it's like, why are you doing that? Like, we were moving in such a positive direction in protecting our youth. And now it feels kind of like they're pivoting in a way that's going to be detrimental. I feel sometimes we're so reactive versus proactive. You know, are there tips that parents can use to, or even us as professionals use to kind of get an idea of how to kind of get more upstream instead of always feeling like we're down at the end of this river of problems and trying to you know, after the fact, troubleshoot some of these issues that come up.
I'm glad you said that, Kimberly, because I was going to ask a question along that vein. So it may not be any surprise to this group, but like if you look at, you know, lung association, stated tobacco control, New Hampshire has the kind of report card that no parent wants to see come home, right?
Yes.
We're not doing well at all. And so it seems to me that there's plenty of opportunity to do some upstream work and advocate for, you know, policy and funding and greater kind of environmental kind of, you know, campaigns or whatever types of strategies that I just don't think that we can just put the burden on parents and adolescents for something that's being driven by very powerful, you know, industry forces, right? So it's to me, that's not fair to put the solutions on the shoulders of 15-year-olds and their parents who are doing their best, right? So I just wonder maybe if that could kind of be on our to-do list for our coming fiscal years, is to explore how can we attract more resources into the state of New Hampshire? How can we advocate for more policy and legislation and kind of that upstream approach? The best practices are published. They're out there. The CDC recommendations are out there. And the state of New Hampshire makes a bunch of profit off the sale of these nicotine products. So how can we grab onto some of that, you know, like we do, or like we try to do with the alcohol fund and other such, you know, what are we doing? And there must be a place where we can start that conversation. That's what I would love to see.
And I also agree, Catalina. I think a lot of times our legislators perceive this profit without seeing the cost it impacts on our society. They're so focused on these imaginary dollars that are going to somehow boost our economy. And they're not looking at how much has got to be put into treatment and insurance and lost work, right? Because you're taking care of somebody you love. It doesn't even have to be you. Somebody you love has a dependency that requires you to get them to services. How much are we losing on that end, as opposed to just always seeing this piggy bank for people's substance use that they perceive is going to be garnered? I mean, we see that with the marijuana / cannabis, right? Depending on who you are and how you call it. They keep thinking if we legalize it, we're going to get all this money. It's like, but how much is it going to actually cost us as a society to legalize this and make it out there for people, right? How much is it going to cost in if you want to boil it down to dollars, lost wages, quality of life, impacting families negatively, right? I mean, you know, where's the study on that?
We're gonna wrap this up here before we open this can of worms. But one thing that I did want to add, TPCP is actually working on, Teresa, is it your 5-year strategic plan? They are doing some strategic planning right now, and they're hosting focus groups and different opportunities to receive this feedback. And so that's why we invited them to come today. 1, we had a request for it, and 2, I was hoping that we could have a really robust conversation, and then some of that information could be brought back as they're doing the strategic planning. And so I'm hoping everybody got something out of this. And Teresa, if you wanted to add anything about the strategic plan, that would be wonderful.
The more the merrier. really, we're really trying to get a mix of everybody who has anything to do with living, you know, just trying to get some any kind of feedback. I think we have one more virtual, or maybe two more virtual. But let me think. The person
actually-
to contact. Oh, go ahead, Joss. Thank you.
The strategic planning sessions are actually all done, but I'll definitely incorporate all of the discussions today into that feedback.
Yeah, showed you how much I know.
I was trying to find it in my email while you were talking. Okay, so if there's no other questions, we only have 3 minutes left, so I'm going to turn it back over to Growth Partners for a wrap up. But I just want to say thank you so much to Teresa and Vicky for a great presentation, and for all of you for participating in our conversation and asking questions. And this was a really great COP. So we'll turn it back over to Growth Partners to wrap us up.
Do you want to take it away, Melissa, or shall I? We've got the evaluation here. I'll go ahead and send the link to everyone in the
Yep.
chat. You will need to complete that to receive a certificate. And I don't know if Melissa has anything else to say. I'll turn it over to her, but it was a great COP. So thanks for having me. It's a good conversation at the end too.
Thanks for pinch hitting, Paul. We do have the NewHampshireTac.org, NHTAC.org is where the COP, various COPs that we do are, and this recording will be there. I did also save the chat to a file. So if somebody is looking for those resources, I did save it. So we can easily, distribute that. And we will meet as a planning committee soon enough to debrief and to plan the next quarterly prevention COP. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and Teresa and Vicky, thanks for taking time out of your really busy days. And I can't wait to read that 5-year plan. So I'm looking forward to it. And to our friends at BDAS, thank you for the funding of the COP. We appreciate it very much. And everybody have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Take
Everyone,
care.
thank you for joining us.
Bye.